hand out to the youth. Today is the day the youth are in here with us, and this sermon was prepared mostly for the youth. The reason I'm asking if you handed them out, I do one for them each week in the ESV version or translation of the Bible, where I preach out of the King James version. And it seems to be easier for them to read and understand, so I do that. And today, the reason I requested that we sing Have Faith in God is because our youth need to understand that we do need to have faith in God, because that's what, our faith in God is what carries us through all of the situations that we come across in life. And today we're going to talk about a familiar passage of the Bible with our youth. I'm sure they've heard it, in Sunday school, and maybe even in some books that they have at home. I almost want to say the story of David and Goliath, but it's not a story, it's true. So the event, the historical recording of David and Goliath, and we're going to read, you'll find it in 1 Samuel chapter 17. If y'all want to turn there. And we're going to read verses 40 through 51. And I hope that the youth that we have here this morning are paying attention to what I'm saying, because this is an important aspect of life. At any age that you are, from the little guys on up to the teenagers, you're going to run across things in your life that seem to be things that you can't overcome. They seem to be just too big for you, or there's too much outside influence for you to make a logical, a spiritual decision. Sometimes it just becomes overwhelming. Sometimes you just don't know what to do and you don't know where to turn. So let me tell you where to turn when you get that way. Have faith in God and turn to Him. There are times in your life where you have to make the decision. You can't depend on anyone else's advice or anyone else's input. It falls on you because it affects your life. Now, I'm not saying that your parents or other adults can't give you sound advice, because they can. Mostly because they've already been there, but especially if they're Christians and they have faith in God. So, this is not going to be a very long sermon, even though it's printed out in three pages. Most of it's just scripture. But let's go ahead and read this. 1 Samuel chapter 17, I'm going to begin with verse 40. And I'm going to read out of the King James Bible, but if y'all want to follow along with the handouts that Wayne gave you, it's in the ESV. And it's talking about David right here. Well, let me back up. So just in case you might not be familiar with the whole event, you got the Philistine army on one mountain, and you got the Israelite army on another mountain, and there's a valley, small valley between. And that's where they're going to be in this battle, is in that valley. Well, the Philistines had this great warrior named Goliath. And I've read multiple descriptions of him. And one particular commentary that I like made a point of saying that Goliath could have possibly been 10 feet tall. Now that doesn't, in our day, that don't compute. You don't see people 10 feet tall. But for the Philistines, they had giant people. And there was this one named Goliath, and he was the champion of the Philistine army. So they got him among themselves, and they said, look, Goliath said, I'm going to go out here and challenge this army to send me one man. So we're going to do this battle with one man. I'm going to fight against this other man, whoever they want to send up here. And if I lose, we become their servants, and if they lose, they become our servants. Well, so he goes out every morning on that mountain, and he calls out to the army, the Israelite army, and King Saul says, look, send me one man up here to fight with me, and if I lose, we'll be your servants. If I kill him, you'll be our servant. And this goes back and forth for days. Well, the Israelite army is scared. they don't want to fight. They don't have any one man that can fight a man this big. And Goliath wasn't just a big man. He was an experienced champion warrior. He'd been in many battles. Even the weapons they used were so big they were terrifying. But with all that, there was nobody in Saul's army that was willing to go out and fight this man alone. Well, Jesse, David's daddy, sends David to the battleground to carry some grain and some cheese so they'd have something to eat, and says, check on your brothers, come back and let me know what the report is. Okay. David goes to the battleground and he hears Goliath's challenge. Send me one man to fight. And he sees the fear in the Israelite army. And he says something to his brothers about how this man is defying God's army. So David says, I'll go out and fight him. And they mock him because he's just a young man. You're just a youth. You're not able to do that. And besides that, they said, and this is where it might come interesting into our teenagers here, because besides that, he said, we know why you're here. You didn't come down here to fight Goliath. You came down here to watch the battle. That's all the reason you're here. Well, word gets to King Saul that David has said, I'll go out and fight him. So he goes to, Saul sends for him. He goes to Saul, and Saul says, you can't go fight him. You're just a child. You're just a youth. You're not able. And David tells Saul his experience with the lion and the bear, how he had killed the lion and killed the bear, and how God had delivered him out of the lion's paw, out of the bear's paw, and that God would deliver him from Goliath's hand also. So King Saul says, okay, I'm going to let you go, but here, take all my armor and put it on to protect you. David says, no, I can't wear this armor. I haven't proved it. So David begins to prepare for the battle. And that's where we're going to pick up right here, verse 4. It says, and he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his God. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. So I want to stop right there for just a second. Basically, what Goliath said was, you're going to come up here and beat me with a stick, because that's all you got. And I'm a man of war. What do you think you're doing? If you come up here, I'm going to kill you, and the birds of the air and the beasts of the field are going to devour your carcass, because I'm going to leave you laying here dead. That's how intimidating and fearful Goliath was. But Goliath didn't intimidate David at all. I'm sure that David knew that God, that God would deliver Goliath into his hand. He said as much to Saul. So David answers the challenge that Goliath. So he says, then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, with whom thou hast defied. Why is that important that David said that? It's important because before anything takes place, David is telling everybody God is going to do this. He's giving God the credit for what's going to happen. And he is saying that he knows God is capable of doing this. And he told Goliath, he said, look, you got a sword, you got a spear, you got a man in front of you with a shield to protect you. And that's how you come into battle against me. A young man with a stick, basically, is what he's telling him, just mocking the Philistine. But then he goes on to say, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistines this day into the fowls of the air, into the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword or spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Again, giving God the credit, knowing that God is capable, standing on his faith in God enough that he's going to go out there and fight a man possibly 3 times his size who has weapons of war. And David has no weapons of war. He has everyday shepherd weapons. He's got a stick and he's got a sling. Now we think about a sling like a slingshot, you know. Everybody has one, a wrist rocket or whatever, or has had one. And you pull it back and it shoots a BB or a marble or a rock, whatever you put in it. And if you practice with that, you can get pretty good. But that's not the kind of sling that David had. It was a pouch in the middle of 2 strings that come out, 2 strips of leather. You put your rock in it and you get that thing going pretty good, and you got to know when to time yourself to turn loose of one end of that sling, and it slings that projectile and hits whatever you're aiming at. Okay, so this is all David's got. He's got 5 rocks that he picked up out of a creek bed, a staff, which is just a stick, and a sling. And he's going up against the champion of the Philistine army. Goes on to say that David made the statement that he was going to win, and when he won, that the whole world would know that there was a God in Israel. A true God. Not an idol, not something somebody's made up, but a true God, and that he is a powerful God. He goes on to say in verse 47, and all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword or spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into my hand. So not only is he saying the Philistines are going to know that there's a God in Israel, but after I do this, Israel's going to know that you don't win this stuff by swords and spears, that God is in control. Well, I want y'all, especially you, pay attention to what happens next, because it seems that this is an impossible deed. It says, and it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew to meet David, and David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine, and David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon the face of the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Now David's already said you don't win these battles with swords and spears. He went out there with a sling and a rock and killed this big champion warrior of the Philistine army, the biggest man they had. Probably the most experienced warrior that they had. But he didn't do it because Jesse sent him to do it. He didn't do it because Saul called him over there and told him he couldn't do it. He done it to keep Israel free, and he done it to give God the glory. You see, David didn't want the glory for killing the man. He didn't come down there with the intentions of killing someone. But there was something that had to be done. And David was the one man there that had enough faith in God to stand up to the challenge. Therefore, David ran and and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Now that's kind of a gruesome, gory scene right there. And if you think about the kind of trouble that the world's in today with all the battles going on, and especially over in the Middle East where these people are mean and brutal, and cutting somebody's head off was not an uncommon thing then, and over there it's not an uncommon thing today. But David did this for a reason. It wasn't that he wanted to be brutal. He'd already killed that giant. There will be people that will argue with him, well, they didn't kill him till he cut his head off. The scripture said that he prevailed over him and that David slew the giant with a stone. They hit him in the forehead. Now remember, this warrior's got all this brass. He's got a coat of mail. He's got sheaves on his leg of brass. He's got a brass helmet. So it wasn't like a lucky shot. He just hit this guy and knocked him down. He hit him in the forehead so hard that the rock went into his forehead and killed him. Because God was in control of that stone. That's the reason, not because David was that good. Well, he cut off his head. And when he cut off his head, the rest of the Philistine army fled. And then the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron, and the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sharam, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. Sorry, I can't hear it. So, the message this morning is this. Have faith in God, especially as we go out into our daily lives, whether you're a youth, whether you're an adult. And those things that seem impossible to you out in the world, especially as youth, you're going to be encountering things that you've never encountered before. You're going to be experiencing things that you've never experienced before. And in your life, you're going to run up against a whole lot of opposition. People trying to tell you you can't do this and you can't do that. It's not possible. Put your faith in God. And whatever you need to do, you'll be able to do if God is calling you to do. There's all kinds of giants in our life, and we can, with God's help, we can overcome those giants. But the way we overcome them is not because of our abilities or our strengths, not our personalities or our talents. It's because of faith. When God is in control, things go God's way. When we take control, things just go into mass chaos. So I want to read a scripture to you. It's 1 John chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. And this just backs up what David was saying about being victorious and about faith. It says, "For whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world. And this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Who is he that overcometh the world, but he that believeth that Jesus is the Son of God?" If you want to be victorious in this world, and you want to overcome the evil in this world, the only way you're going to do it is through Jesus Christ. There's no other way. Now, I'm not trying to talk you into making a commitment and saying something that you don't really believe. Because I'll tell you this, and this is a fact. If I can talk you into becoming a Christian, Satan can talk you out of it. So I'm not asking you to make a decision based on anything I've said. All I'm asking you is to consider who God is and what God does. And if you put your faith in God, He will be there for you to the end of time. As we stand and as we pray.